The Utah Jazz are selecting 30th in the NBA draft tonight. And Jake, I guess here's the question that I need to know, and probably because, well, it's the Monty show.
Right. It's not the Jake show.
Talking to NBA sources over the last few days, why is it that people think the Jazz are the same old, same old? And even though they have a new owner, it does not seem that there's a high level of confidence that this organization has changed much, because the Jazz have been very quiet. And talking to people that cover the NBA on a regular basis, that seems to be a talking point about this team, about, hey, why are the Jazz not doing anything? Why are we not hearing about the Jazz? I am confused as to why we have not heard a front office edition. Well, okay, I can kind of write that off to, hey, you know, the Jazz are in their draft process. They're looking at free agency that starts on Monday. Like, all this is going on. Okay, we'll wait and, you know, August and September and your mom, like, we'll get it done, right? Okay, cool. But should you now, as a Jazz fan, and I don't know what your opinion is, Jake, and I'm curious, should you now have confidence that this is truly a different organization that's doing business differently than they've always done it?
No, you shouldn't. I think that we have to wait for actions to speak louder than words. You know, I think we have to wait and be shown that this is a different organization and it's being run in a different way. And that's, you know, I think that this tonight is a very important night for the Utah Jazz, not from a basketball perspective, but from, I think, a mentality setting the tone for what this team is really going to be under Ryan Smith perspective. You know, I think that Ryan needs to put his stamp on this team, and he needs to show the fan base that you know, Dennis Lindsey's no longer the one picking up the phone, you know, making the selections, you know, and to me, I just think that overall this team, you know, needs to get past the narrative of, hey, we don't draft well, so we're just going to trade out every year and figure it out from there. But tonight, the problem is that, you know, drafting at, you know, 30th overall, you know, that's not a great slot to be drafting, you know, anyway. This is not a particularly deep draft. This is not, you know, a special draft. You know, there's some talent here, yes, but at the end of the day, for the Utah Jazz and where they are, it's not like this draft is going to, you know, be difference-making for you. And the other thing I would say, too, that's also an underlying thing that we're going to have to wait and see is, depending on how they handle the draft tonight, let's say they do pick up a draft pick and they do make that selection at 30, which I'd be surprised by, but let's say they do that. Okay, are you able to start developing players at a higher level? Because that, to me, I was thinking about this last night, and if you really take a look at it, every other team, you know, that's a serious contender has guys on it that they've developed and they've turned into something. You know, whether you go east or you stay west. I mean, every team that's contending has that. And I feel like the Jazz, you know, while, yeah, sure, they've developed Rudy on the defensive end, and Donovan obviously has seen development, you know, I don't feel like overall they do a particularly good job of pulling talent out of the draft, paying those guys very little money, and turning them into very productive players. The same way that, you know, the Phoenix Suns have, or, you know, the Golden State Warriors did with their core, you know, and so to me, tonight is an important night on many levels. Ryan Smith needs to put his stamp on this team one way or the other. We need to see action, that this is not just the same old Jazz team. And at the end of the day, I would really love for the narrative to turn from, hey, this is an opportunity for the Jazz to screw this up again, to, hey, what are we doing to make our team better tonight?
Well, it's interesting, just in talking to some people around the NBA, you know, sources are telling us that the Jazz have made it known that their preference would be not to trade Bojan Bogdanovic, and that they are engaged with several clubs on Derek Favors and that 30th pick, as well as Royce O'Neal and Joe Ingles. But the Jazz have told people that they would rather keep Bojan Bogdanovic than move him, which I think aligns with what we've been talking about, that if you can have Donovan, Bogey, and you know, Rudy Gobert together, that core can get you into the playoffs and win you games, and be a very good basketball team. But I think they realize that they have financial issues that they have got to address quickly if they want to re-sign Mike Conley, which seems to be their priority at this point. So If you kind of put the pieces together, it's pretty clear the Jazz are trying to move their bottom 10 players on the roster. I don't think, beyond, and again, I'm just going to stick with what I've said the entire time. I don't think that they will make a significant trade. I don't think any of those three guys are going anywhere. I certainly don't think, obviously Don's here. I don't think Rudy's going anywhere. Essentially, it's impossible to trade him now anyway. I think you're looking at guys like Derek Favors, Royce O'Neal, Joe Ingles, which, by the way, again, I'll just say, Joe Ingles is a guy that I'm not going to love it when he gets moved. If he gets traded, I think it's a mistake for the Jazz. I think Joe Ingles is a really important locker room guy. I think he's a glue guy. I think he does a lot of things very well for you. And just understand that if they re-sign Mike Conley and they trade Joe Ingles, it is because they valued Mike Conley much more than they valued Joe Ingles, and they will pay a chemistry price for that. Jake, I think if they move Joe Ingles, I guess I'd need to know why and how and what the framework is, but I think that might be a mistake to trade that guy.
Yeah, well, if you think about mentality, like in the way they view trades and who's valuable and who's not, when our sources are telling us that they would prefer not to trade Bogey, the problem with that is Bogey is one of your most tradable players. And then you start looking up and down the roster and you're like, okay, so if you're not going to move Bogey and you start looking at Jingles to supplement a trade package, because think about it, the baseline, the what's already in the trade package is Favors in that pick. And now the conversation's going to, okay, well, what else can we include to get done what we want to get done? So naturally, yes, Jingles is going to be in some conversations. That's just going to be a natural flow of where things are at with the Jazz roster. And yeah, I do think that trading Favors, Jingles, and that pick for whatever you decide to get back, and then going and re-signing Mike Conley, I think that's foolish. That's just my opinion. And I don't mean to sound harsh, but I do think that that's foolish because at the end of the day, Joe Ingles has proven to be a very durable player. Yes, is he slowing down? Absolutely. 100%. There's no question about that. But he's a very durable player. And I just think that continuing to leverage your starting five on Mike Conley is a continued mistake. And I think if they re-sign Mike Conley, we're going to have a serious discussion on this show about what his value is and what the expectations should be. Because I don't think, as a Jazz fan, you should expect Mike Conley to play more than 50, 55 games, tops. I mean, that's what you're talking about with him. So it's this fool me once, fool me twice thing, right? Fool me once, that's on you. Fool me twice, that's on me. And that's kind of what I feel like Mike Conley is. If you re-sign him for what we feel like he's going to go for, which is probably $23 to $25 million a year. That's, being realistic. So I don't know. I hope they don't do that. But at the end of the day, it wouldn't surprise me. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me.
And I think the thing that really stands out to me about all these conversations that are centered around the Utah Jazz is that I think the question that has to be asked is this the same old Utah Jazz? Which is why we started there, because I feel like largely this is how the Jazz have always done business, and that is to stay out of the deep water. Don't make waves. Keep it low key. Like, think about the last time the Utah Jazz made a trade that was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, that just does not happen. And it did not happen with Dennis Lindsey, and really it did not happen before Dennis Lindsey. And now I think if you're going to win an NBA championship, you have to have the balls to make that kind of deal.
But do they have that? I mean, I don't know. That's the tough part. Like, does your gut say that they're willing to make a deal like that?
Are they willing? Sure. I just don't think they're able to make that deal right now. I think the way that the cap is set up and the luxury tax, and this is not a team that can afford to pay a massive luxury tax. There's just no way that you can do that. I mean, I look at some of the luxury tax numbers around the NBA, and it is really scary. If you are the Utah Jazz, when you see some of the numbers, that there are teams out there that are paying $20-30 million in luxury tax for a single player. That's not what the Jazz can do.
Yeah,
you cannot go into that land and think that you're going to be able to make that money, because I just look at where they are. I look at I look at Bruce Brown getting a qualifying offer from the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
The Brooklyn Nets don't care if they pay $100 million in luxury tax. I just don't think they care. They have that money. Their owner is deep pocketed as anybody.
Yep.
And I just don't think they care. I mean, I look at the way the Lakers, I look at the way the Clippers, I look at the way these big market aggressive teams do business, and the Jazz can't do that. And that's partially why I think the Miller family was always so plotting, methodical. They were always very pragmatic about their money, because one miss in a big trade like that, you're in a tough spot. And I go back to guys like Carlos Boozer. I go back to big moves like that kind of blew up in your face, even though Booz was a decent player here. Those moves just did not work out. And if you look at teams that tend to be really aggressive in sports, I look at like a team that makes a lot of moves that never wins, the Anaheim Angels of Orange County, Los Angeles, right? I mean, like, you can go to Mo Vaughn, you can go to Josh Hamilton, Albert Pujols.
Yeah.
That's not how you win, right? You draft well, the Jazz have not. You leverage the draft, the Jazz have not. Like, that's what's got to change.
Yeah.
So tonight, what they do with this 30th pick, and do they make trades? Do they hang on to Favors? Like, if you trade Derek Favors, it should really signal to you that you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, to me, and I don't know.
I agree completely. I think that the Jazz need to. I think that the Jazz are in a position where they need to start, moving towards. Hey, how exactly? The question. Let me put it this way: the question that needs to be answered, and the question that they need to be consistently chasing through times like the draft and free agency and anything transactional in the NBA is, what does the roster look like that's going to win us a championship with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert? That's the question, because at the end of the day, those are your two guys. Bogey is 100% tradable. Whether they want to trade him or not, he's 100% tradable, you know?
Right.
And so to me, the question just really is, what does the roster look like that wins them an NBA championship? What do you need to find, and what do you need to bring here to beat the LA teams, to beat the Golden State Warriors, to beat the 76ers and the Bucks and the Nets? What do you have to do? And I think that for them, obviously, that's a very opinion-based question, and everyone's going to have different thoughts on that. But at the end of the day, no matter what you think the answer to that question is, in order to do that, whatever it is you want to do in terms of building a championship team, you got to have the money to do it, and they don't. So, tonight, I'd love to see them move Favors in that pick. I'd love to see that. Get that guy off your roster. It's time. I also, again, I know you were just saying here that your sources are telling us that they don't want to trade Bogey, but I wouldn't be upset if they moved Bogey for the right price. I wouldn't, because now you've really got some flexibility. And then if they sign Conley, then we're going to have a discussion about, okay, well, you did sign Conley. As much as I disagree with that, you did sign Conley. What else have you done with the roster? Are we still heavily reliant on him? Or was that just a nice addition that you're kind of backstocking with? That's what I think, if you're a Jazz fan, you need to be paying attention to tonight. Because they definitely could hurt themselves tonight. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, yeah.
They definitely could set themselves back. But I think there's also an opportunity to make the right decisions and to continue the momentum forward that you have right now. And I hope that is what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you spin it any other way than the definition of Ryan Smith's ownership begins tonight. Like, the Rudy Gobert contract, I mean, I don't think there's any way to spin that it's a huge mistake. I mean, I don't know that you can even call Rudy Gobert's deal with the Jazz anything other than a hindrance at this point, right? And I maintain that Rudy Gobert's the reason that Mike Conley may not be back in Utah. Mm-hmm. I look at Joe Ingles. This Rudy Gobert contract is going to cost you a human toll. And it's a matter of which human that winds up being. Is it Mike Conley? Is it Joe Ingles? Is it, Bogey? You're having to make really difficult decisions because you're going to pay Rudy, an average of $41 million a year now. And again, I'm not blaming Rudy. You take that deal every single day if you can.
It's not his fault.
No,
that's for
I mean,
sure.
I think you take that deal every single day that you can. But this is why, in my opinion, Ryan Smith has to be particularly aggressive now because the past regimes, and sure, he nodded his head about the Rudy Gobert deal. Of course he did. But I think the past regime, Dennis Lindsey in particular, really handcuffed the opening days of Ryan Smith's ownership. And I think you're going to have to be aggressive to get out from under that. I really do.
Yeah.
First in this morning is Jimmy Shrinkock. Shrinkock?
Bro.
No.
Who the f*** is that guy?
Yeah. Brylark says, morning, boys. What's up? Shredder says, here we go with more Rudy Gobert hate. It's not Rudy Gobert hate. It's reality, right? And I think this is something that I feel like you have to do. Mm-hmm. You have to keep it real on what it is that the Jazz have to do. The Jazz, I don't believe, were ever seriously trying to acquire Kyle Kuzma.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kyle Kuzma is going to be a Sacramento King. I think that's going to happen. I think Buddy Hield is going to be an LA Laker. I think the only reason people tied Kyle Kuzma to the Utah Jazz was because Kuz played at Utah. He was a running Ute.
Yeah.
Other than that, what value does Kyle Kuzma have to the Utah Jazz? Well, has he met his upside yet? I don't know. But when you have 3 years at $13 million a year left, that doesn't bring real value. By the way, here's the other question. What are the Jazz going to offer the Lakers that the Sacramento Kings cannot? Because they don't have a Buddy Hield to send in return. They don't have the money to send in return. They don't have the draft assets to send in return. So if you're the LA Lakers, what are you possibly going to get that you're not going to get from a different club with value in a guy like Kyle Kuzma? Because everybody thinks they can, quote, fix Kyle Kuzma or develop or, help him meet his potential, his ceiling. So he's got value around the league. You're screwed on the salary cap. And I think the other thing that's amazing to me is, they're going to trade Joe Ingles for Kyle Kuzma. What does Joe Ingles bring to the Lakers that Kyle Kuzma doesn't? Kyle Kuzma shoots the three. Now, Joe Ingles shoots it as well. But Kuzma is a decent defender. He's way more athletic. He's younger. And by the way, they make the same amount of money. So you get no salary cap relief if you're the Jazz. Yeah. I think that was always a pipe dream. I think that was always, somebody's cool ESPN trade machine thing.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It's a reach for sure. And I think a lot of these, like the comments saying that we're hating on the Jazz, dude, a lot of these trades and a lot of these situations are, you got to remember, it's not just the Jazz picking up the phone and saying, hey, LA, we want Kyle Kuzma, so here's Joe Ingles, where do we sign? I mean,
we're going to fax over that thing. We're going to DocuSign you the trade agreement. Just go ahead and sign that.
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't work that way.
I mean, the Lakers are not going to make deals that make them older. They've already got an old team. You know, I mean, they need to make deals to supplement their older players, their veterans. And so to me, I just think for the Jazz, Kyle Kuzma does not bring enough value in return overall. I mean, that's just another project. That's another guy that's eating space when Donovan's trying to get to the basket, And so to me, I just think at the end of the day, the Jazz tonight and today and, once free agency's over and all that, they just need to keep it simple, keep it straightforward, make the smart financial decision. And that doesn't mean you have to go cheap, but don't leverage injury-prone players or players who are freaking projects like Kyle Kuzma. Don't make those silly mistakes. There's no reason to make them, Even if you make a trade for, and you get favors in that pick out of here for whatever you can get back,
right?
That puts you in a better position in the cap, Like that's a good move. So that's why I say at the end of the day, they need to keep probing the market, keep making phone calls, keep seeing what you can get done, and then hopefully, you make a trade or two more, and then you sign some free agents. That's what I think we're looking at this offseason. But at the end of the day, I just am terrified of the Mike Conley situation because if it is true, and I do think it is true, that they really are wanting to bring Mike Conley back and they think that he would
I
be,
don't have any doubt that that's true.
yeah, like
no
and,
doubt
and they,
whatsoever.
and they think he would be a great, re-addition to the team and everything. I just really struggle with that concept. I struggle with it because at the end of the day, you sign Mike Conley, and the first question I'm going to ask is, okay, how much are we load managing this guy in the middle of the season? Because that's got to happen. If you want him to be set up for success in the postseason, he's got to be load managed.
Yeah, I think that if you invest heavily in Mike Conley, you better have the infrastructure to support that.
And that's the other thing too. To backstop him getting hurt, they don't have that. So Mike Conley gets hurt, who's coming behind him? Are we comfortable? Are we comfortable relying on Elijah Hughes already? Are we good with that? I mean, because I'm not good with that. I mean, yes, he's developing. Yes, he's a nice little player. But he is not Mike Conley, right? That's a big fall off. So all I'm saying is, hey, cool. You want the new car, like I said on the show yesterday. You want the new car, but you don't want to pay the premium to fill it up, right? You want the new car, but when that breaks down, you don't want to take it to the shop. That's my problem. That's my issue.
Well, and I think that's why you have to remake the bottom half of this roster. I mean, your bottom. Your bottom 12 players are all available.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
Though?
But I mean, most teams are in that situation, and it is, and again, just talking to a guy that I know that is in NBA circles, saying that the Jazz are. I wouldn't say that the Jazz are aggressive. I would say that they're very active. It's pretty clear they don't want to make the pick. Well, I mean, I don't think that's surprising. Why would the Jazz want to pick at 30?
They wouldn't.
That's an
not
asset.
Where they are.
Yeah, that's an asset.
Yeah.
And whoever you take at 30 probably doesn't see much of the floor, right? So you have a coach in Quinn Snyder that you're committed to who is not going to play a rookie. You're trying to win a championship or at least compete for one because I think that the Jazz, I'd have to believe that Ryan Smith and Justin Zanuck realize that they are not a NBA championship contender at this moment. So you have to make pragmatic, well-thought-out moves to get yourself into that situation. Whoever you draft at 30 is not going to be that guy. Now, there are names you could draft there, sure, but I think you'd much rather offload, Derek Favors in his guaranteed $20 million deal for the next 2 years, which, yes, has a player option in year 2, but why at Derek Favors' stage of his career would he not pick that up?
He would.
He's
every
going
time.
to. And the NBA, we've already been told the NBA teams view that as a guaranteed $20 million deal that they'd be picking up.
Which is smart, because it is.
It is. I think that's how you have to look at that.
Yeah.
And that's why I say I think the Jazz are in a pretty difficult spot. It's not easy to unwind the watch. Like, I mean, the horse is out of the barn, right? I mean, he's already crapped out the hay, man. Like, you can't unwind it.
And he will every single time.
Right? So I just think that you have to do the best that you can do. Again, with Rudy's contract, Rudy's here now, right? So you have to figure out, hey, if Rudy's my starting center and he's a guy that's going to play 35 minutes a night, I need 4 other guys that can score the basketball because Rudy cannot. I need guys that can be multi-dimensional on defense because Rudy is not. I need guys that are more athletic and can keep guys out of the paint to take the pressure off of Rudy Gobert on the defensive end. Like, these are all things that you have to consider. And then when you know that those are priorities for you, okay, well, Mike Conley has been priority number 1. What does Mike Conley do to offset those issues? Well, I think he brings Rudy into the offense because they have clear chemistry, right? I mean, they lob to each other. Like, the pick and roll between those two is really strong.
He prioritizes Rudy more than anybody else on the team.
Yeah, without question. Absolutely, he does. So there's good chemistry there. But then you also have to look at the defensive end. Mike Conley's a really good defender. I would call him a plus defender. He does well. He's got quick hands, which I think helps Rudy. I think it helps everybody else. I think Mike is a smart defender. But then you look around, I think Donovan's improving. He's not by far an elite defender, certainly. Donovan's improving, right? So that's 2 of the 4. Royce O'Neal, in my opinion, has always been overrated. I don't think he is an elite defender. Joe Ingles is no longer an elite defender. Bojan Bogdanovic has 0 lateral movement ability on defense. So you have all of these guys, and Jordan Clarkson. Jordan's the word I want to use is a wanting defender. Like he makes the effort. I wish he was a better defender.
His purpose is not to play defense.
It's
the
not.
thing.
And that's
not
why
his
he's not
purpose.
in the game late.
Yeah.
His purpose is to come in and shoot the ball.
Yeah.
Which is why I think he has tremendous trade value, by the way. He scores.
Yeah, and people will be asking about him.
I think you're in a situation where you have to get quicker. You have to get more athletic because you were out-athleted
Many times. Not
every
just
day.
in the playoffs, dude.
Right? Like you had a lack of athleticism every single game you played this year. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. In the postseason, it mattered every night.
Yeah.
Memphis was more athletic than the Jazz were.
Yeah. Just couldn't execute.
It didn't matter in that
Yeah.
series because they couldn't execute, right? And what did they do? They made significant changes to their DNA.
Yep.
Anyway, all of this to say, I think knowing that you have Rudy and Don, and I think Bogdanovich is going to be here. I do. And knowing that you have those three, and if you assume that the Jazz are going to bring Mike Conley back, those four, I think you've got to find 5 more guys that can contribute 20 minutes a night.
Yeah, you can't be playing 7 guys all season. That's not
You
going to work.
can't. And
That's
Quinn
not gonna
wants
work.
to do that. And I understand it, but you've got to play. In my opinion, your best young player is Elijah Hughes.
Yeah.
I
He should see minutes off the bench, dude. I mean, I'm
should.
not saying 30 a night or anything, but
No.
I'm saying 15 to 20 for sure. I mean, he's good enough. The talent that let me put it this way, the ceiling is there where if you play him, I'd love less than 20 but more than 15 in that window, dude. 15 to 20 minutes a night every single night and develop him. That's what needs to happen because he can really shoot the ball, not just from 3. He's got a nice little mid-range as well. His problem is going to be the speed of the game, knowing what to do, situational awareness essentially. That's what his problem is going to be. So overall, I just think that assuming it's not official, we haven't heard anything, we don't know, but assuming they re-sign Mike Conley, let's just say that happens. You got to understand that Mike Conley, you cannot run him into the ground in the regular season. That can't happen, and it can't happen because you need him for the postseason. So somebody like Elijah Hughes or somebody who's not on the roster yet who you need to find, that's got to happen. You need that backstock. So I think they really need to be playing. I'd love to see them play 10 guys. That's what I would love to see in the season, in the meat of the season, when you're playing every other night and you've got back-to-backs and all this crazy stuff. I would love to see them on a 10-man rotation. That's what I think is realistic. That's what Phoenix plays with essentially most nights is 10 guys. And I think that's what's necessary because it'd be nice if Quinn could rest, Mike Conley the same way that Chris Paul was being rested. That would be nice. So that's what I think they need.
The interesting thing about need is you don't always get what you need. You don't usually get what you want. You get what's available. And to the Jazz, there's not much available.